Hey, welcome to Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. We all know that money can be one of the biggest sources of conflict in relationships. And today I'm hanging out with one of my favorite humans, Ashley Shepard, certified public accountant. She's providing us with some practical tips to reduce our money troubles. This is Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? This is so awkward hanging out in such a formal way.
I know normally we're like side by side in person.
We normally are over fancy steak dinner and nice glass of wine.
Yes.
We spend our money very well.
Yes, we do.
So we know that money is such a big source of conflict. I mean, it's one of the top, next to sex and communication, all those things. So from your experience with working with so many different people in so many different contexts, and you work with a lot of business owners and things of that nature, what do you see when conflict comes up around money, like in relationships? What are some of the sources of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have different money, views on money, or they weigh it differently in terms of importance. Some people really focus on it, other people don't. And then in terms of just your mindset around it, as business owners, like you and I, we're very driven, and money is a product of that. And other people, they have their priorities elsewhere, and money is just something that you have to get, but then maybe they don't care to get a lot of it. I don't know.
Sure. No. And I see that, I see that a lot. And then those differences in opinion, then they come together in relationship, and there's this expectation about combining finances. But when you have such differing views on money and such differing views, not even your value system on what money represents to you, but how you spend it, how you use it, because I think those are two different things, even because somebody could be their value system is, oh, you should save and be frugal, but then they're on Amazon every night,
Yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
Talking about myself, but I'm just saying.
Not at all. Yeah, it comes down to also a big thing is a lack of communication about money. A lot of times couples will have one will be the spender, one will be more frugal, and they don't talk about it because it starts to fight. So they decide to just ignore it, and the one resents the other, or vice versa. So I think the lack of communication is huge as well.
How do you help people? So obviously you're not directly helping them with those type of things, but I mean, I know firsthand from you being my accountant that we do talk about things in our calls that are, beyond just the numbers. So I know that you are providing support for people, you're helping challenge perspectives around money and things like that. So when you start to see that happen with the clients that you're working with, what do you usually suggest for helping them either to make their views, come more in alignment, or what do you usually do around that?
Yeah. Well, little did you know, I'm also a therapist.
Little did I know.
Calls, I can't act as one.
You've been holding out on me. You end up being my therapist usually about once a month on our accounting call. So
once in a while. Most of the time I'm speaking with one person at a time. And so if we don't have any financial or business things to talk about, I usually am probing questions. And a great example is I have a client who's married, and the one is very involved in the business and wants to grow and is very numbers oriented person. And then the spouse is kind of more oh, I just want to, create all these things, but they're not focused on the numbers. And a lot of times it's okay, well, talking about okay, how can we get you guys a little bit closer to seeing, understanding each other, and how to make it work a little bit better. So just kind of talking through that with them is helpful. To kind of understand okay, so you're this type of person, they're that type of person, what are some things you can do to kind of try to make it work, you know?
Do you see that pretty commonly? That is it like really common for a couple to have like pretty different views? Like what is more common, for them to be more in alignment or for them to have different views around it?
I would say it's most common that one person is the one very involved in it and the other one is like checked out. Like, you're taking care of it, I'm not involved. You do that, I don't do that, kind of a thing. That's what I see a lot.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, and that gets super sticky because I see that frequently as well. And then the person who's focused on it often feels like they are
in the load.
yeah, or but also like being controlling, or they're being like, they are almost parenting, they're almost the authority on this thing.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this like, why are you always so worried about money? Why are you so controlling with it? And then the other person's like, why aren't you ever paying attention to it? Like, you don't even know what our balance is right now.
Right. Yeah. Like, maybe if you were more involved, you wouldn't feel like that because you'd understand like what I'm seeing. Yeah. I think it really comes down to like, we got to come together and like talk about it and like openly put a plan together. A lot of people are just kind of going day to day without like a financial plan, especially if they're in a partnership or married or whatever. And they're just kind of going day by day. We have no plan, no like set like goals as a couple, like with money, you know.
Let's start there. What would be some ideas for even putting a plan together? Because I mean, that is a great point. I completely agree that one person is almost always in the dark. And a lot of the conversations that I have is they'll literally say, like, if my partner passed tomorrow or wanted a divorce tomorrow, I don't even know, I wouldn't know how to pay our bills, or I wouldn't know what I'm entitled to or anything like that. So what does that look like for these like initial meetings to put together a plan and to get everyone on the same page?
Yeah, I think that like the first step I think is like, okay, we have to get comfortable opening up and like having like, maybe they have like a little monthly meeting where they kind of review stuff, like, you know, let's kind of review what we have going on and then maybe set a couple goals of like, hey, this is kind of like, what do we want to accomplish as a couple or a family, and kind of just kind of at least keep the other person in the loop.
Yeah. Does that usually look like savings goals or like budgeting or both, or
It could
vacation
be,
goals, or
yeah, it could be literally anything. Um, you know, reducing expenses, paying off debt, investing more. It could be just kind of being more, creating awareness of like, where's all my money going? What are we spending
right?
our money on? You know, maybe they have certain goals, like they want to buy a house or they want to relocate, you know, stuff like that. So,
Are there like apps or methods that you suggest if somebody wants to keep better track of like where their spending is going, or for even a family to be on the same page with it?
yeah, I mean, I use a lot of like spreadsheets, but I feel like you could easily use like Mint or um, any of those like personal budgeting like tools where they just connect to your bank and then you can see like, okay, I've spent this much on dining out and your groceries and your home expenses. And then one thing that I really like personally and to work with some clients on is tracking your net worth. And some people have a negative net worth, and that's okay. It's looking at it and saying, hey, how can I get that number less negative and going in the right direction? So, like tracking all your assets, all your liabilities, like with your debts, and figuring out, okay, my number's this right now, but like next month, I want it to be a little bit better, even if it's $1, you know, like really
Yeah.
focusing on just like overall improving that over time.
It sounded very therapist of you to say some of them have a negative net worth, and that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get you there.
Yeah, everyone starts somewhere. Some people have kind of put themselves in a, you know, they're in a bad position and that happens. And it's all about learning and growing from it. And like, okay, like, yeah, like I don't like the number I see right now, but like you can like, it's better to just, okay, let's change and go forward than, okay, I guess I'll just dig myself a bigger hole, you know?
Right.
So it's accepting the fact that you are where you are and you can always get better. So
yeah, and that awareness, I mean, which I talk about in so many areas, but that awareness is so important versus keeping your head in the sand around where the finances are at, or
Yeah.
some people, like, maybe that's their only option is paycheck to paycheck, but even with that, that's often, sometimes there are other options of, even like, okay, if I know this is what it looks like, maybe I'm going to do like DoorDash a couple times a week, or I'm going to start selling some stuff around the house or things like that. As you're saying, just even if the next time you go to check it, it's improved a small amount, like you're still working towards that goal.
Yeah, I always encourage people to get, if they're working a job and, they're stressed about money, it's like, just find one thing that you really like to do, and like, and make that like a little side business. It doesn't need to be crazy, but like finding a way to do something you like, or something that you can do that you can just generate a little bit of more money from. Because
Right.
if you probably have some time you can devote to that, and then if you're less stressed about money, chances are your life's probably gonna be a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think money becomes one of the biggest sources of resentments when I'm talking to couples about, kind of like, before they commit, talking about financial compatibility. So, do
Yeah.
your spending habits align? Do your value systems align? How
Mhm.
important do you see that becomes, when there is a lack of compatibility? And, well, let's start there, and then I have a follow-up question from there.
Can you repeat the question?
Nope.
Okay, my mind was like forward.
You were thinking about my next question. The
Yeah.
financial compatibility piece of it,
Mhm.
like, do you see that being like, so we know that that's important, but like, how important is it when you see
Yeah.
even how successful people are with their and I guess even when we're looking at a couple, so maybe the couples that are thriving versus the ones that are struggling, does the compatibility have anything to do with it, or is it, even if one is good at money, then they are thriving?
Well, I mean, I don't have the statistics behind me here, but I think it should be more of a um, important topic. I think a lot of couples, and I may be generalizing, I don't think that a lot of people do say, hey, on the money side, we are incompatible. How can we get to a place where we can kind of maybe meet in the middle somewhere, or you can at least understand where I'm at and I can understand where you're at. We can have some understanding as like, how are we going to make this work together? I don't think a lot of couples actually have those types of conversations. And I do think that, if one person is successful, they're making most of the money. I don't know that there's like the other person is not, but I imagine that many couples do not have the same view, the same importance, the same, beliefs behind it.
When you start working with them and maybe you're helping them come up with like game plans or talking about the importance of communication around it, um, do you actually see them meet in the middle? Like, do you see improvements with that? Do you see the one that's maybe less interested become interested?
I once in a while I'll see, oh, the spouse is going to start participating in these conversations. They get more involved. But from just what I've seen personally, it's usually like the one person is dealing with it, and that may be because the one person is running the business, the other person, they actually have a job, and that's what they're focused on. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So I think it just depends. But I think oftentimes it's the one person's dealing with it because the other has no interest, doesn't understand it, and they've just kind of maybe decided that, hey, like, you're better at this than me, so I'm going to let you stay in your lane, I'm going to go over here, even though I believe that they should both be in that lane and like talking about it openly together, so that they're both kind of aware of like what's going on.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think our beliefs, like, do you think, I guess, like our financial values, that they do shift over time?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I think that they can if you want it to, right? Like um 10 years ago, I was like literally budgeting like a fool. I was like every penny, like literally every penny, 17 cents, like every single penny. I was like budgeting, where's it going? Where's it going? And it was like so much where like I believe in energy a lot. Like I felt like I was like holding on to it and like hoarding, but that's just telling like the universe like I I don't need any more, you know what I mean? So like scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas I decided like I don't want to live like that. I don't want to have limited resources. I want to have unlimited resources. I want to not be stressed about money. And so it took many years to get there because you have to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to make that happen? But it was a choice. I could have stayed where I was, somewhat comfortable, broke. I could have stayed there and I would have been okay, but I didn't want to live like that. I didn't want that I didn't want to be like that. And so now, fast forward, 10 years later, money is not really a stress. It's still an important thing for me, but it's not like the end all be all. And I can see money and everything. It's like totally different views, mindset, everything. Now I'm like, I want everyone to just have all the money that they can have, and like it's just unlimited, and like you could go get it. It's out there. So it's just totally different than how I was.
What do you think shifted your motivation? Like what, because I obviously have a lot of clients that they want that and they talk about wanting that and they're like, how can I change that? But what got your snowball kind of rolling? And what motivated that?
I was actually working, I had a job a little bit after college, and I remember sitting there. I hated it. I was working this job with it was a small office, and I just remember thinking, the men were running the business, and then it was just like this like thought in my head. I'm like, if I don't change myself, I'm going to be here in like 10, 20 years and I'm going to have made no progress in my life. And so just kind of, seeing that some people have stayed there for that long, I'm like, I don't like, I want to excel and like do all these other things. And I can't have that with where I'm at right now. So I really just, that night I went home and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to like get in a different position? It was, for me, it was, okay, I'm going to go get my CPA license. And like, what does that look like? I have to go find a school to go to get the credits, and then study for the license, and like I literally mapped out the steps. I'm like, it's going to take me like, I don't know, 3 years or something, And so I like literally mapped out the whole process, what I needed to do to at least get into a better position where I had more value. I could solve people's problems. I could, charge more for my time, my knowledge. And that was really that was my journey personally.
Yeah. So really identifying like, what is this goal? And then what is my first step towards that? And I think thinking about it in terms of relationships, like I think that is really applicable, that you sit down with your partner and you're like, okay, what is our first goal and what can we each contribute to this? Which we also see as often a barrier, is feeling the differences in contribution in that way. How do you feel like your values around money or spending, how does that influence your relationships? And I guess even like from your relationships 10 years ago to present day, has there been a shift in partners you choose because of that?
Yeah, it's becoming more of a today it's more of a conscious something that I look at, because ultimately I want someone who we can align, we can find like a middle ground at least, because I don't really don't want to be held back. And I think that if we can't at least get on the same page like energetically, I worry that someone who has different, like complete opposite money beliefs as I will, that will be in my environment, and the energy can kind of like bring you back down,
Mm-hmm.
where I need to feel like abundant. I need things to feel abundant. I can go get it. And it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely very aware of that. So as I'm like dating, even in the past little while, I feel like I have not been as conscious about that. And I have, I don't know, I'm attracted to people who are like, I want to go hustle and like make it happen, and like they're financially independent. Can't say those are always the people I've ended up with in my past, but it's definitely a desire, because I know, like, I worry that I'll be, held back in that way.
Yeah, I think that's something that you and I talk quite a bit about in our personal conversations, in terms of, we do have a very driven mindset. Like, we are both hustlers, and we're passionate about what we do, which I can identify as a blessing. I know not everyone is passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
But that becomes important to us, and there is a struggle in finding compatibility in that. And I know for myself, like, a lot of times, because also the stigma society puts around money, right? That like, you're greedy, you're, all the capitalism stuff, just all of that, that it's like there's something wrong with you if you are a hustler. But as you're saying, no, that kind of switches your quality of life when you go out and you're receiving that. And so for me, like, it's not money that I'm chasing. It's the ability to travel and to experience things, and to go to nice steak dinners with my best friend. Like, those are the things that I'm chasing, those experiences, which you
Choices.
need money to be able to provide some of or a lot. I mean, an airline ticket, yeah, you need money. So with that though, like, I know that I catch myself, like, I get in my head around that, because I'm like, okay, are you just being shallow because you want a partner who can match you in that?
Mm-hmm.
But do you struggle? Well, I kind of know the answer, but share with us about how you kind of struggle with, you know, that push and pull as well.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with it. I think also sometimes I naturally am like, you know, I don't want to take care of someone, like have to cover their needs, like to
Yeah.
live. But I like to be able to treat someone, like do nice things for them, because I can, because like you said, we have the choices, the ability to do that. And
Right.
I like to do that, but I also, my concern is, um, is that people are going to take advantage of it. They have in the past,
Yeah.
so that's a concern as well. Is, are people with us because we, for the right
Can provide
reason,
that.
or
Yeah.
because we can provide an experience, or an option, or something, a life, so that's definitely, a concern. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with those gender differences as well. So, like, it it is the stereotypical gender differences, I think, come up, and we definitely don't fall into that. But with that being said, I've actually seen where we know historically it's very common for a male to be like protector, provider, but I've been seeing even like all genders, kind of
Mhm.
hustlers of all genders, kind
Yeah.
of getting fed up with this, the idea of, like, I'm not busting my ass so that
You
you
don't
don't
have.
have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, that becomes like, but again, then like, you can love somebody who maybe doesn't make the same, or doesn't have exactly the same compatibility, but I do believe there has to be some similarities and some alignment, because again, it leads to so many resentments.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, okay, maybe you don't make the same amount, but they have the same drive, the same level of drive. or close. I mean, not everyone's going to be, oh, we're exactly the same drive. Like that's kind of impossible, but seeing their actions, right? Their daily, what they're doing every day. Are they like chilling on the couch and they're like, whatever, I don't really want to work today.
Yeah.
You know, or are they like, you know, I'm fucking hustling. I'm doing everything I can. I'm like, you know, they're passionate about what they're doing. That's different. Right.
Yep.
But yeah, we're not hustling so that you don't have to, like,
right.
And maybe they contribute in other ways as well. You know, they're hustling in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Non-monetary. That's a possibility too.
And that's so true. I mean, and I love that you're making that distinction, because there are going to be the partnerships where it's agreed that you are going to go make money to support our family, and you're going to take care of the household management and things of that nature. And you're absolutely right. Like that is not our point here. I think it's more, we're talking about the discrepancies in mindset versus income versus what's being generated.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, I know for me that's one of the biggest barriers. But for people who are listening, I think that, you know, focusing more on what do your how do your value systems align versus how do your paychecks align, so to speak.
Yeah. So tell me more about your how you see,
so tell me more.
this lines up in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, and because there is a bit of a traditional gender role reversal that I don't need someone to take care of me. And so I become a lot more selective in partnerships because of that. So I think for me, sometimes it becomes a barrier because then I want somebody who can match that. I want a partner. And so I want somebody that is on that level with me. But also I think, you know, me being in hetero relationships, that men, I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard how intimidated they were, then I would have enough money for you and I to be able to just, you know, head off on a trip. So
I can imagine that's hard.
That, I mean, in that piece, and not all men, I don't want to say, you know, I know men are listening, like that's not all men, but I think that's often what I run into. Or men maybe that are kind of on a similar hustler level. They're often used to being the provider. Like they are used to that role. So even if they're not intimidated by it, it's not something that they're used to.
Well, maybe they don't know how to, like, oh, you don't need me to take care of you, so what, now I have to spend time with you, or like do some like you know what I mean? Like, oh, now I have to like give myself in a different way that maybe they can't, or they don't have the bandwidth to, you know.
Sure. Which is that's exactly, I mean, quality time all day long is I will take over anything financial that you can provide. But you know, it becomes quite the interesting feat for sure. But for now, we will remain single. When do you think that people should start combining finances? Like, what are your views around? So if people are dating, what are your views around combining finances in general? At what point? What does that look like? Sorry, we're totally switching gears. I'm not deflecting at all, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm kind of actually back to that last thing. I don't know that there's not a one way. I don't think. I definitely I think that it depends on the couple. I think that they should agree together, you know. But at the same time, like, I know that I probably wouldn't want to combine all my money.
What would that look like if you were to combine with somebody? And by the way, I'm not combining shit with anyone. So let me make that clear.
I don't think it's for me. Like, you know, maybe we have like some like joint account for like shared expenses, but other than that, I personally don't think that we need that. You know, I just don't think I don't need to know what you're spending your money on. You don't need to know what I'm spending my money on. Like, we don't need to worry about the balance in the account, or, you know, whatever. I think that if you do join up your funds, like you have a shared account for like your shared bills, your home payment, your utilities, whatever. And I think it's okay if you don't. And I think it's okay if you both want to put all your money together. I think it depends on the couple. How's their trust, how's their communication, what are their desires, like depending on all those factors. I think that they can decide like, yeah, I think this is how we want to do it. That's going to work for them. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I
think that's the most important like blanket statement of this, is that there is no right or wrong. So like whatever works for the couple and whatever feels like safest and most comfortable, because also looking at the differences in dynamics. So if somebody is managing the house and they're not working outside the home, then of course there's going to be the joint funds, and that makes sense. For people who are dating, who each have their own incomes and they're coming together, exactly what you described to start with is often what I suggest to my clients is like, you guys have this joint, like a joint fund that you're determining how much you're each putting into, which again is not always the same dollar amount. It might be like the same percentage though. So you're each putting, X percentage or whatever that looks like. But then that becomes the family or the house fund. And then you still have access to your own.
Right. Yeah. I think that lines up more with me. I think it just creates less troubles between people, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, I think just kind of coming together and deciding as a couple, like, hey, this is the way we want to do it, especially when you're dating. Not that, I personally don't think that, I think if you are in a committed relationship with someone, you don't need to get married to say like, we're committed. But I think people naturally place a higher regard to, oh, we're married, so now we'll join our finances. But I don't know that there's a reason to treat it differently. I think that when you're dating, like if you're committed to each other, you're in an exclusive relationship or whatever type of relationship you're in, you're living together, to have that pooled fund is fine, regardless of your status.
Sure. Yeah. And again, it really, is what makes most sense. Do you have any, like, when maybe somebody is your client who is, so maybe you're not working with a couple, you're working with an individual and they're getting serious with somebody. And so these conversations are coming up. What like suggestions do you provide for them to like protect themselves financially?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just say, fuck it. Jump both feet in.
Yeah. Well, honestly, most of the people come to me and then they start, they're probably, most of the people that I work with have been, I would say, are in a relationship of some sort primarily. There are the occasional single clients I work with. And I would say that, maybe they're like, I'm moving in with my boyfriend or girlfriend. And I generally, I think that, again, it's going to be determined based on like, okay, how long have you guys been together? Like, what are your plans? Like, are you guys, are you going to rent a place? Are you guys both going to be on the lease? Like just making sure that they understand, their rights and like the things that they need to be thinking about. Like, okay, if you guys are buying a house together, are you both on the loan and the title? Like all those things, like just kind of going through it, making sure that they understand and are thinking about, just kind of making sure that if we're doing this together, we're doing it together,
Right.
Just kind of creating that awareness around, okay, well, if you do this, you got to think of like these couple items, and just making sure that they're having those conversations. And
at what point do you think that couples, if they're dating or whatever, should start doing financial planning together? Like, do you think they need to be living together to start doing that? Or like when they're like, and then also, I guess if their funds aren't combined, do you still suggest that they do financial planning together?
Well, I think it depends on like, are they in a serious, like they're like, we're in this forever, like what type of relationship are they in? Are they just dating and they don't really know like where it's going? If they both have come and said, I'm in this with you, like this, whatever. I think that
You
that
are my person,
you
like
are
that
my
whole formal
person
thing.
forever. I think that's a different conversation. And yeah, I think that they should start. I think they should start having the conversation like, hey, what are your financial goals? Like, what are you trying to accomplish financially? Are you trying to get into real estate, or are you just trying to your whatever it is? I think having the conversations as early as you can so you can start to learn and support each other. But I think it depends on the seriousness of the relationship. If you're 2 months in, you're moving in, I don't know that you need to be financially planning together, but at least you can start having conversations around, where you see yourself going and like, what do you see what are you wanting to invest in, and what do you want to do with your money, and stuff like that. I don't think it hurts, but like, it just depends on the relationship.
Well, I think that there's different tiers to it, because I think, and it's what you're saying. So like, if you're in this dating phase, I don't really think it's okay. Maybe I'm not on the first date. We're not going to throw this out. So like, you're not like looking to see what you can get out of them or how much they're worth. That's not the point. But early, like if you start dating and you're like, okay, I could potentially see a future with this person, I think that's a great opportunity to start gauging financial compatibility. So as you're saying, like, what are some of your goals? What are you wanting to do with your career, and getting an idea of spending habits as well, which you could hang out with somebody just a couple times and have a pretty good idea of maybe what some of their spending habits look like. I mean,
you'd be surprised.
Just saying.
Just ask their accountant and they'll say, oh, I see all these things that they buy.
Yeah. And hope their accountant doesn't judge them when they make all those purchases. But anyway, never. And then I think the next step of that is like, when you do start dating, you can start talking about really if there is like alignment in that and getting on the same page. Because I had a client not too long ago, and he was like, well, I don't know if they're not really planning for forever, but they are serious. Not that they're not planning for forever, but it's like they just haven't gotten there in the seriousness, Yeah. But he's like talking about the difference in their finances, almost as if it's a lost cause. And I think that second stage is really like, can we find compatibility? And then going into that third stage, which is like more of the planning together.
So in that situation, like, yeah, I think they're like, okay, I feel like it's a lost cause. Okay, well, have we talked to the partner, and like, is he or she like completely adamant that they are not going to change? They don't want to know any other view, At that point, it may be a lost cause, but if maybe they just haven't had the right conversation, or they haven't approached it the right way. They haven't said, hey, honey, I really want to like get on the same page with you and like figure something out. Like, maybe the approach is different. But like, even if it is a lost cause, like, what do you see that as like a non-negotiable, a make or break in a relationship? Is if one person is, one way and the other's the complete opposite, do you think that's like, just break it off? Or what do you think?
I think if you catch that early enough on, I do think that for me, that would be a deal breaker. But when I'm thinking about like the needs, wants, and boundaries that I suggest for people to identify in their partner, that would be something on my list, that like, I need somebody who is a hustler and who wants to work hard and has good work ethic and, all of that. So, and I guess because there's a couple different discrepancies we could see here, right? Because we could see if somebody is not, maybe their work ethic is not the same.
Right.
But then also if spending habits are different.
Sure.
The spending habits, I don't know. I guess I don't know how much of a deal breaker that would be for me, because I am spending my own money and I'm not really worried about how you're spending yours, but I'm not going to spend mine on you because you have poor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a couple aspects of that.
Yeah, you're right. There are a couple aspects. Yeah. The spending, the overall desire and view. Yeah. It's kind of a can of worms, honestly.
But I do think that to some degree, it does become a little bit of a deal breaker if there is a huge divide. But you made a great point that, did you talk about it yet? And in this particular situation, no, like it was touched very much on the surface, but it wasn't like, how can we start to come towards each other with the differences in our behaviors? And I think in the same way that I've, learned over the years that couples really struggle to talk about sex, they really struggle to talk about money. Like both of them become such sensitive topics.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people in general don't know how to talk about money because most of us, like myself as a child, we don't talk about money ever.
Yeah.
So that becomes a challenging thing to discuss, especially in a vulnerable place with your partner. Especially if they're the one making all the money or whatever, like that's hard to talk about.
Right.
So I think that it would be a good idea to have the conversation, even if you need to like get a couples counselor to like help you facilitate it, just so that you guys can find a middle ground. Because if you both want it to work and the one is like, hey, this is a real issue for me, like we have totally different money views, like I need you to meet me, I need us to meet somewhere so that I can continue. If that person cares about that person and wants it to work, they're most likely going to say, you know what, I will give it a shot, I'll try it and I'll try to get there. Like if you care about this person, like of course you're gonna do that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the bigger issue is the other person doesn't even have the opportunity to show that I care enough to make the changes or whatever, because it just doesn't even get brought up. And I think you make a great point as to why, when we think about our relationship programming, our views on money is part of our programming, that we were programmed to think about it a certain way, to think about either the scarcity or the abundance mindset around it, how we talk about it, what's the etiquette. And if we don't dig into that and create awareness around like, okay, is the way I'm acting about money because of my own value system that I've created or because of what was passed down, we're just going to keep doing what we know. Yeah. So on that note, dig into your programming around finances and communicate about it with your partner. And and that there's no right or wrong. There's no black or white. I think that, like we're saying, what we want out of a partner, that it can look different for everybody. And I think that you finding out what is right for you is most important.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you for hanging out with me, friend. I appreciate it.
Having me, it was a blast.
Where can everyone find you? What's your socials, website, everything like that?
I am all over Ashley Shepard CPA. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, everything. So
you're just everywhere.
I'm everywhere.
Very popular. Go check her out. She has lots of good tips and she's really cute, and she would love to share all her cute tips with you. The tips aren't cute. They are very smart, but her face is cute.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'll see you later.
See ya.
Thanks again, Ashley, for providing us with the inside scoop on how to manage our money better in relationships. And thank you all for hanging out on Relatable Relationships Unfiltered. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, sign up for my newsletter, and find me on Instagram at Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick. This is Relatable Relationships Unfiltered.